Good evening, everybody. Thank you for attending tonight. Before we start meeting, the fire exit is to your left here. Is it recording? Yeah. And should anything spontaneously combust, please go out of the door here, and that's to our residents and visitors as well. Before we go any further, I just want to say how good it is to have the planning committee back on board. It's extremely important, and recently there have been changes with government and permitted development rights, which they've now made permanent, which has a huge effect on both the economy, community and the environment. And NALC, National Association of Local Councils, are against it, and the chairman, Sue Barker, is calling for an independent review on the effect upon residents and businesses who are adjacent to permitted development rights extensions. And this will involve NALC, local government and member councils, and of course member councils are us at town council level. And it's important that we hone our skills on planning, because in the future we'll be much more important on planning. So it's really good that we've got the planning committee back again, because it's important for our community and our environment. First item on the agenda is to elect the chairperson. Councillor Scott.
I'd like to propose Hannah Scott to be chairperson of the committee.
Proposed. Seconder? Councillor Page. Excellent. And everybody approve? All vote?
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillor, you've got. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so next item on the agenda is to elect a vice chairperson. Have we any nominations? Can the chairperson nominate somebody? Can I nominate Councillor Cornford as the vice chairperson? Are there any other nominations? Okay.
Okay. I'll nominate David Wallen, as I understand that he has an interest.
Yeah.
Seconder for that?
Can't second myself, can I?
So,
And Joanna won't, because
so you, yeah, so
Yeah,
if you
so-
can just vote on it, please,
Okay.
for the proposal for Councillor Cornford, because you had a second for Councillor Cornford. So if you could just vote on that one, please.
Yeah. So all in favour of Councillor Cornford?
Cornford. Thank you very much.
So are there any declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests? No? Thank you. So have we had any apologies for absences or substitutes?
No.
So this is the full planning committee?
Yes.
Thank you. Chairperson's announcements. I have no announcements to make as yet. The only thing I'd like to suggest is that on part 9 that we move E to the beginning of part 9 with regards to plan applications, as it's the most lengthy one to study. But I've got a seconder for that proposal. Is everybody in favour of that movement?
Thank you. Thank you.
Have we had any notices for public participation?
No.
So the terms of reference for the committee, the clerk sent round a draft set of terms of reference which have been slightly amended since the full council meeting. Just give you a chance to have a quick look again.
So are there any comments or amendments that people suggest to those? So the first thing I wanted to look at was the role of the committee. It says the committee role is to consider and make recommendations on the planning application, consultations, and statutory and non-statutory. I've got a feeling that A and B, that we consider and decide upon those two things, A and B, because we've got delegated responsibility for those two things. So for A and B, it's the committee's role is to consider and decide upon those two things, whereas C and D is to debate and recommend to full council, and D is to debate and recommend to full council on those two things. So it could be that that is separated into consider and decide upon, that one, and
Yeah.
then to debate and recommend strategy to the full council for C and D.
Okay.
Because we don't have delegated responsibility for C and D.
No.
Is everyone happy
Yes,
with that?
that's good.
Yes.
And then over the page, at the full council meeting,
Mhm.
with regard to devolved authority,
Yeah.
where the plan application is subject to time constraints. So this is in between planning meetings, which means that a meeting, like a planning meeting, will not be held before the deadline for the comments, or a full council meeting. Then and we decided that it would be the chair and vice chair through emails have the authority to do any of the following through the clerk. And it was those things. But that's only if all of a sudden it comes out of the blue,
Yeah.
which now that we've got planning committee and we've got full council meetings, there shouldn't be anything
exactly.
in between.
No.
However, if there is something out of the blue, then
Yeah.
what we suggested at full council was that it was the chair and vice chair get together quickly and make a recommendation
Yeah.
on those. And if necessary, if we think that it's extremely important, then we call an extraordinary meeting on it.
Yes,
So
I mean, committee members can make comments to us, can't they? Is that muddying the waters?
It's quite hard to do something, so it's basically what we're saying is that if in between two meetings
Yeah.
something comes up out of the blue, then it's given to me and you for decision. If we think that we need the whole planning committee to decide upon it, then we'll call an extraordinary meeting. However, if we think that we can make a comment and it's not contentious, then we'll make the comment.
I mean, this won't arise anyway because you get at least 3 weeks to consider a planning application. So, like you say, because you've got council and planning, you know, there's not going to be a 3-week period
this is
where
just in
it's only
August,
August.
isn't it?
Yeah, only August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's just the fail-safe, isn't it? Because it happened last week, didn't it?
Yeah.
Over the C Road application.
Yeah, but that was only because of this hadn't.
Yeah,
formed.
got
Yeah.
going. All right, yes, of course.
But it's only if everyone in the committee thinks that's okay and trusts us that we'd call an extraordinary meeting if we think that it needs to be called.
Yes, no? Okay.
Okay.
There are my two recommendations. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Is
that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So planning decisions by Thanet District Council. These decisions have been made. 14 St Bennett's Road, Westgate-on-Sea, erection of a single-storey rear extension, been granted permission. 33 Station Road, Westgate-on-Sea, retrospective application for change of use from storage to number 1 bedsit, refused permission. 3 Morden Avenue, erection of a single-storey rear extension, granted permission. 36 Cuthbert Road, erection of a single-storey rear extension and erection of detached single-storey garage to the side, granted permission. 13 Camborne Avenue, erection of a single-storey rear extension, granted permission. And Flat 1 Beach Rise, installation of 2 UPVC windows to rear elevation. I'm not too sure if I've got the Was that granted permission?
Yes.
So planning application for consultation, we're going to take E first, which is the St Peter's, the church on 117 Canterbury Road. So this is for an erection of a 4-storey building for mixed-use development comprising of 766.9 square metres of commercial office use on the ground floor, which is class A2, together with 6 one-bedroom and 15 two-bedroom apartments on the first, second and third floors, with associated parking, access and landscaping. And on the portal it explains that following demolition of the existing buildings. So Councillor Matthew Scott, have you got it up on your laptop
Yes.
for people that want to see it? Okay, so just a bit of a history on this. The application first came in last year through Miles and Bar, who made an application for change of use from the church as a place of worship to commercial building. And we thought that this was a good use of space, a good use of a building, and we approved it, and so did TDC. So now this has come in as an updated application where instead of refurbishing the church would be demolished, the bungalow next to it would be demolished, and this large building will go in its place. So that's the history of this planning application. So have we got any comments from members? Councillor Page.
I think the first most obvious one, having looked through the documentation on TDC's website, is it's a completely different development project to the one that was presented to us previously. And having looked at the attached documents, I don't believe that a lot of the information is relevant now to this new development project, because they were linked to the previous one. And I feel that there is an element of information lacking, and that we should be requesting up-to-date information on all aspects of this application.
So what, if I can ask you, what in particular do you think is missing?
I think some of the plans don't include enough information about the landscaping and the entry, access, egress. The tree report that is there is actually out of date. It was done in November 2017. It had a life cycle of a year, which is stated in the document, so it became invalid in November 2018. But that particular tree report was related to the previous development that was applied for. It's completely inapplicable to this new development project and probably doesn't address the project that is being presented to us now. We need a new tree report from scratch, and we would need that really as soon as possible, because we have many objections here, a lot of which are actually referring to the ecology, the trees, wildlife. It's a very important aspect of this particular application.
With regards to getting a tree report quickly as possible, our response needs to be in by the 20th, so therefore this wouldn't be forthcoming by that point in time. So we'd need to make a decision on what we've got now. There is a possibility of recommendations of what perhaps they might want to do in the future with an amended application or an application in the future. However, it does seem to be that we haven't got enough information that's actually needed for this planning application. Are there any other comments?
There's no conservation report and there's no CAG report.
So, with regards to CAG,
It's the same thing, isn't it? Conservation and CAG.
with regards to the Westgate on Sea CAG, I was sent some emails through from our Westgate-on-Sea Conservation Area group, and they said the same. They said that as it's in a conservation area, the conservation officer should submit a report. And then they did actually speak to the case officer, who is Alistair Hume. Oh, no, they didn't speak to the case officer. So the case officer is Alistair Hume, but he was in a meeting, spoke to a colleague. Jacob, who is the conservation officer, no longer works for TDC, and another heritage officer has been appointed, but this person didn't know the name of who the heritage officer was. Apparently the heritage officer report, there will be one, and it should appear on the website in the next week. So that's too late for us to decide upon. But she also said that there are tree preservation orders for the site, and a tree officer should also be involved with the site. So there should be a tree report clearly from TDC, and also a report if they wanted to make, if the applicant wanted to make a tree report, then that would need to be a new tree report. But there's two documents that are missing at the moment that we can't see. With regards to their objections, CAG's main objections are: the design of the proposal flat roof building bears no regard to the conservation area and the quality of the property therein. The proposed building shows a lack of sympathy to the immediate surroundings and also the Victorian essence of Westgate-on-Sea. There is concern over the safe access and exiting of cars onto the site. The site is on a dual carriageway and very close to a busy set of traffic lights. Traffic exiting the site cannot turn towards Margate, and therefore would have to cross the dual carriageway to do so. So they are quite concerned about the actual design of it. They're also suggesting that if a building is granted, then it should be sympathetic to the site and situated within the original footprint. And that's one of the things that I noted, is that the footprint of the new building is much larger than the church and the bungalow combined. So if perhaps an application came in that was the footprint of the original building with less trees cut down, like a minimum of couple trees cut down in order to aid the construction of it, then something like that perhaps wouldn't be of concern, and perhaps even would be, thought of in a good light. There's definitely a positive to the fact that Miles and Bar wants to have an office there. That was in the original application. The number of or some flats on top is not an unreasonable request either. However, the size of this does look, it looks oversized for the plot, and because it's oversized, then the number of trees that want to be cut down is completely over the top, in my opinion. Councillor Cornford.
In the Highways report, they say in principle the Highway Authority is satisfied with the proposal for the new building, but there are 4 points that they want to have addressed, and one of them is the width of the entrance, the site access. They say at the A28 is very narrow, and it should include a 4.8 metre wide access road to allow the vehicles to enter and exit simultaneously without queuing on the public highway. But as the CAG report says, it's very near the traffic lights and you cannot turn right. Now, if they make a 4 metre entrance and exit point, that the highways say that results in the loss of 1 parking space. But they've allocated parking along the front of the property underneath all the established holm oaks. Now, what concerns me is, well, what made me think was that at the back there is an area. We've got all the parking along the front here, where the holm oaks are, but at the back there's a really large space that there's nothing in. So I don't know why this parking can't go back here, So there's no question of keeping the Holmoaks, which retains the character, and also the cleaning of the air. Do you see this section here? It's in the plan. It's on the eastern corner.
What's that going to be used for in the future, perhaps?
Well, exactly. Have they got other ideas for here? But they've got, if they moved all this parking back here, anyway, off a tangent a bit, there's cycle parking is referenced in the design, but there isn't any showing. There's nothing for refuse collection arrangements, which could go at the front of the premises, because no one's going to bother about the mess from the perceived mess from the Holmoaks on refuse bins. And no details have been submitted in regards to EV charging points, that's electrical charging points. And the highways are requesting that all parking spaces allocated to individual residents should be fitted with some form of EV charging point. And in addition, 10% of the commercial parking spaces should also have EV chargers. So there's 4 points that highways have brought up.
So we agree with all those 4 points.
Yeah.
However, if they did widen the access, that would no doubt cut, more trees would need to be cut down in order to widen the access.
Yeah.
So not only are we concerned about the number of trees around the site now, but also the trees that have high amenity value at the front of the building as well.
And the trees at the back in that empty area are not high amenity. There's sycamore and some smaller trees there.
We have got to be careful about the sycamore because the ecology report suggested that could be where bats may nest. So they need to look into the bat survey as well.
Okay, it just really needs some compromises, some revisiting the whole plan.
Councillor Matthew Scott.
Only just to comment on, because with regards to the refuse, I think they are looking to make a bin store. I mean, obviously it's quite a large area for a bin store to go. It only seems to highlight the residential aspect of bins for down the district council. And obviously it's commercial property as well, which will have its own commercial collections. But
Where is the bin store going?
no, it just alludes to the fact that it may require a bin store to be built there on the highway thing.
Well, at the moment,
Yeah,
it's
so
a
they
waste.
haven't got one at this moment.
No,
in
at the
time.
moment it's a waste-free building.
Yeah, some form of bin store will be likely to be required on point 3 for the 21 apartments. They'll be using that 13-metre long refuse truck.
So not only have we got an oversized building and it's using up most of the space already, but actually more space needs to be taken up, one by widening the access, but two for refuse collection, which isn't actually on the site at this moment in time.
No, I mean, so whether they're using bins, and obviously you've got to take into account whether the business or not decides to go and use district council as their commercial, they might go with another provider which will have their own access times and restrictions, and obviously will have to use commercial waste and their own sort of truck. So
Which
it
aren't
could be
on the
bigger.
plans either. Thank you. Any more thoughts?
Yeah, there was concern in the report about where the recycling truck would actually park or enter the site. Because at the moment it seems it stops on the road if needed. But is that going to cause a problem with traffic? And if that truck needs access and egress into this site, it's going to be even more of an issue with widening the entrance and the removal of trees.
Okay, so the main considerations are with regards to the conservation area, that the design of it, especially as CAG is suggesting, the design of it doesn't seem to be in sympathy with the conservation area. The buildings around it are of different design to what's been suggested. So around it are sort of buildings of Victorian and Edwardian architecture. They're suggesting looking at Tower House, Hatton House, Dune House, which is adjacent to the proposed site. All are fine examples of Westgate Victorian Edwardian architecture. Then the report, the conservation area report, is missing and hasn't come out at the time when this planning application came out, so we can't view this. We don't have a tree preservation or TDC tree officer report. It's not clear what trees are being cut down, and it looks like a lot of trees will be cut down, so we are objecting to any more than a minimum, a very small number of trees being cut down on the site. We agree with the KCC concerns, and we view that the building is oversized for the site, so it's overmassing of the site, and therefore if a new application came in which was quite a bit smaller, that would then reduce the number of trees that would need to be cut down and may be viewed in a better light. Councillor Page.
When you refer to the KCC concerns, are you talking about the fact that they've requested a surface water drainage strategy?
Yeah,
You are.
as well, thank you. And the
Because they've
KCC
said-
highways concerns as well.
Well, KCC have requested that this surface water drainage strategy is needed before approval can go through, and that doesn't exist at the moment.
Were there any other material concerns that we haven't thought about?
The height.
So it's a 4-storey flat roof. So CAG are saying that proposed flat roof building bears no regard to the conservation area.
I mean, we've got here the lodge next door, and then this 4-storey square modern block, which will come up to the base of the chimney stacks on Tower House. And Tower House is already an imposing building, which they consider to be, they compare it to a commercial premises. They say it's obvious that around the surrounding environment is commercial premises, when in actual fact, to the east of the new build, there is this small lodge, which is conservation, and to the west of it is Tower House and then St Augustine's. But the fact that the actual flat roof comes up to the base of the chimney stacks on Tower House is truly overpowering. And it's noteworthy that they've given us a design without trees, and then they've provided an architect's drawing with a couple of trees plonked in the front. So they're not, there's no landscape. Well, you mentioned that, didn't you, Kat?
There's no landscape
No,
on
there's no
any of the
landscape.
plans.
And it's environmentally important at the moment. There are a lot of established trees there.
So all of the trees would, as it's in a conservation area, would have to have planning application to be cut down. So we'd need a clear indication of what trees they would want to cut down, and then we'd need to make a judgment on those. But it's not clear what trees they want to cut down at this moment in time. And overall, we would reject trees that have tree protection orders from being cut down, and suggest that the application needs to be, and design should be changed in order to work around the trees that have been here for hundreds of years, rather than cut them down instead. Councillor Anthony Scott.
It does say existing landscape. I mean, obviously I don't know that is to just give an indication to the height and that trees over there, but just in the imaging, it does state existing landscape. I think they just basically showed the two pictures to indicate what the building would look like, but how it would look like with the existing landscape in front of it, what you can and can't see. I mean, obviously, that's just the plans, which, as we all know, plans feed to what we'd like to see, not necessarily what we'll get.
Councillor Page.
It's just a minor consideration perhaps, but I did make a phone call I made a phone call to the Catholic Diocese of Southwark to double check whether or not the building and the land was consecrated and whether the gardens at the back were consecrated or whether there were any graves. And they checked their archives and came back and confirmed that the answer was no on all counts.
Okay.
No consecration.
Lovely, thank you. That's great. Okay, so are there any other material considerations with regards to this application?
No, I think
This is
covered
great. Could you please read out the considerations that we're going to be
Yes.
putting forward?
Okay, so the fact that it's a conservation area is a major concern. The design, and you've got the comments from CAG, so it's not in sympathy in your and CAG's opinion. The buildings, it's a different design to others in the vicinity. You've got the lack of the conservation area report. There's no TDC tree officer report, so it's not clear about the trees that are being cut down at the moment. The KCC concerns, that's the highways, underwater drainage, you support their concerns. Overmassing of the site, which obviously impacts on the number of trees proposed to be reduced. The fact that the flat roof is imposing on the, I was going to say, I wasn't sure how to put that in. The flat roof is imposing on the,
Yes, on the neighbouring property.
yes, neighbouring property, thank you.
And out of character for
Out
the
of
area.
character, that's the word I was looking for. No landscaping on the plans, there's no clear indication of the trees to be cut down, and any that have TPOs on, obviously you wouldn't support those being cut, and actually the application should be revisited and it needs to be altered to fit with the trees that are on site that are obviously protected.
And it be in sympathy with the existing environment.
Be in sympathy with the existing environment is very nice, because there's also an ecological report which suggests there are bats in the area, and therefore we need a bat survey done of the site. And also there are concerns regarding the birds, so there may need to be a full ecological impact assessment if TDC suggests that. And also a habitats assessment. Councillor Page.
We mustn't forget clear designation of car parking and cycle provision, because they are referred to in the documents but not on the plans, not clearly.
Councillor Matthew-Scott.
Yeah, just to reiterate on the highway concerns really, due to how close it is to the crossroads, we just got to take into account that if it becomes a residential, these will be people with families, so kids may be crossing the roads. Obviously we have to do the crossings for that, but it's more the concern for cars coming out. I mean, the traffic lights won't be visible from one way, and the oncoming traffic, if someone's feeling particularly rushed, may take that opportunity and chance to sort of nip out. So just, there could be some sort of potential risks with the traffic, and obviously if there's vehicles unloading, it's also a very popular bus route.
Councillor Crawford.
There's a bus stop directly in front of the entrance, and that does cause a problem from traffic coming from the traffic lights. And also we need the EV points that aren't included, the electrical charging points.
So with regard to all these points, I suggest that we are going to suggest that this should be rejected for now. And if another plan application came forward, taking into account our concerns, then we view it favourably in the future. And also, I suggest that we ask Mrs Gray to ask our TDC councillors to call the application in, so it's viewed fully at the TDC Planning Committee.
Okay. So just to be clear, this is objection with comments?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
So with regards to those comments, you've read them out. If you'd like to send them to me before they're sent over to TDC,
Yeah.
is that, if that's okay with the committee?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so if we go back to then A and start from the beginning. So A is 3 Dandelion Road, erection of a single-storey rear extension together with alterations to the roof to facilitate loft conversion and installation of 2 roof lights to rear elevation and 2 roof lights to side elevation. Have we any comments on this?
Yeah, firstly, I live in that road, so does that count as am I allowed to have any say on it?
I was say, if you have a material interest, you
If I live in that road,
pecuniary
then
interest,
would
Um,
that
you-
count as
you-
one?
well, you should have declared at the beginning of the meeting, but obviously if you've not got material interest in the property, then yeah, that's fine.
Okay, grey area.
So it's possible for you to give your views?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah, just
Yeah.
want to check, because if it's your next door neighbour, you probably can't, but if it's, you know, I live at number 19, so it's the other end of the road, but it's still the same road,
Okay.
so.
Councillor Page?
Yeah, the first thing is bothering me is the roof, which is lead. So I'd just like to query whether lead is allowable as a building material these days.
Yes.
So this is, yeah.
It is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Shall I come back to Councillor Page in a minute, or have you got another comment?
No, that's everything at the moment.
Is that your only concern with regards to it?
Just looking at my notes here at the moment.
Okay.
I think there's some concern because there are 3 objections from people who are worried about the change to the property overlooking theirs and making the use of their own property uncomfortable because of dormer windows that are going in.
So not due to the single-storey rear extension, obviously, but these 2 roof lights
Yes.
and roof lights to the side elevation.
Yes.
So they're actually dormer windows. Councillor Crawford?
This application was identical back in 2005. And it was rejected by Thanet District Council. 3 people, as Councillor Page pointed out, there have been 3 objections on this, and basically character altering and loss of privacy, and the fact that it was rejected before. And it's part of a group, and it's in a conservation area.
So the application hasn't changed since 2005,
No.
which it was rejected back then.
It's an identical plan to TH/04/0213/205.
Thank you.
2005.
Councillor Page?
A couple of the neighbours have said that they wouldn't object if the existing property was in a good standard or a good state. But they feel that the existing property needs to be brought up to a proper standard before anybody should be considering any further development or refurbishment on the property. And it has been commented that they feel that this happens on a regular basis, this being applying for change to the property, but then nothing is done. It's never followed through. And this just seems to be, from what I can see from the objections, a cycle of behaviour. But that's purely on what I'm reading. I don't know anything more about it.
So the previous application was rejected due to the character of it and also loss of privacy. I'd suggest the loss of privacy is the most important material consideration with regards to the roof conversions.
Not character altering.
Character altering as well. So, would anybody like to make a suggestion as to our response to this?
One minor thing. The house about number 11 did have a 3-storey extension put on the back of it about 2 years ago. So it's a different sort of house, but they are following a house a few away from them did get an extension, did I say 3 years ago? So they're following on the basis that it should, you would assume, get it, because the original one did.
So I think the concern though is regarding the roof lights on the rear elevation and side elevation. It's the alterations to the roof that they're concerned about, not so much the single-storey rear extension, although they're suggesting the character of that is changing.
Yeah, with the conversion of the loft, through the chair, with the conversion of the loft, it's going to create a lack of privacy for neighbouring property.
Okay, so if we make that suggestion then that we are concerned about the loss of privacy due to the changes in the loft, in the roof, and also basically bringing up the concerns from the previous application.
Yeah,
Sorry, Councillor.
the loss of character in that group of houses.
So just to be clear, this is objection with comments?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And the 2 comments are loss of character?
Yeah, the change of character, and the main one is the loss of privacy
Yeah, loss of privacy.
from the alterations to the roof. Is everybody in agreement with that? Yep. Show of hands. Thank you. So, B, the Warren Drive, erection of 1 2-storey 3-bedroom dwelling with associated parking and cycle storage. Have there been any objections?
No.
No.
No objections from what I can see.
Are there any other comments from councillors with regards to this? Councillor Page?
I couldn't see anything negative on this application at all, in any way. There's been some advice offered to the applicants to increase part of the fencing that they're considering down the side and the rear, because it's allied along that side to play area, which is near the school. And it's just purely so that the fence they want 1.8 metres, and they've been advised to raise it that side to 2 metres. And they've been advised to choose some special glass and ventilation, so that whilst people are in the house, they feel it's noisy, they have the facility to close windows but maintain ventilation, say on a hot day. But those are purely positive recommendations for them to proceed with what they want to do.
Exactly.
But other than that, there's nothing negative about this at all.
Are there any other comments?
No.
So, shall we suggest no comment, or shall we suggest we recommend this to be approved?
I recommend for approval.
Okay.
Yeah, supported.
Supported, yeah. Thank you. So C. 3, the boulevard. Reduce crown of sycamore tree by 2 metres, clean out crown to enhance visual appeal and increase light levels to the garden. The first thing that comes to mind is this work being done now, or will it be done after the breeding season, the nesting season for birds? That's the first thing that comes to mind. Are there any other comments? from councillors?
Considering what happens to the focus on trees at the moment, I think is important. We should request before and after pictures for this, and the fact that it's done in October and outside of the March to September.
So we can request that it's done outside of that season. However, if it's necessary, they feel for health and safety to do it within that period, then they need to have a full survey of the nesting birds. However, it seems to be the reason for it is to enhance visual appeal and increase light level to the garden. So therefore, that kind of work is not for health and safety reasons and should be done outside of the nesting season.
And it should be monitored.
So I just argued against myself there. So if we can just suggest, yeah, I just went round in a circle. So if we can suggest that it is done outside of the breeding season, outside of the nesting season.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason for it to be done inside. Councillor Matthew Scott.
I was going to say, I mean, we may also just possibly approach this one because probably the request is due to the fact that it's to enable light to come through the light levels of the garden.
Mm-hmm.
So probably it's worth approaching or finding out when the proposed plan is, and obviously following up with that suggestion, because I think that where might be a conflict of interest where obviously someone wishes to enjoy a garden.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously if all the correct protocols are followed through, the infrared scans, and there's an insurance that there isn't any sort of habitat or life with those trees. Bearing in mind with just this the proposed.
Yeah, I can see what you mean. However, most people take that into account and plan to do that kind of thing, you know, before or after the nesting season. So our recommendation would be to do it outside the nesting season.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And a reason to be given as to why it needs to be done within the nesting season, and therefore documentation of all the proper surveys if it is done within the nesting season. So we have to have a caveat to that.
So are you objecting or are you supporting with comments?
Supporting the comment. Is everybody in agreement with that, to support this with comments that this is carried out outside the nesting season?
Yes.
And if it's necessary that it's carried out within the nesting season, that we are given a report.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Councillor Cornford?
Can we request follow-up photographs? Is that something we can do?
We can request it.
I was going to say, I'll ask. Yeah.
So request photographs before and after.
Mhm.
Councillor Matthew Scott?
No, just it was a vote for being in favour.
Okay, so yeah, everyone in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you. The next one, 17 Linden Road, erection of a single-storey rear extension. Are there any comments from councillors? Councillor Matthew Scott?
No objections to what I briefly had a chance to look at. I've gone and closed the window now.
Councillor Page?
Just again, this is a fairly straightforward removal of a conservatory, and then the rear of the house to be extended out into that space to refurbish the property, and the patio behind the new single-storey extension to be raised to match the patio that's on the left-hand side. It's fairly straightforward.
And no objections?
No.
Any other comments?
No.
So we can either have no comment or we can recommend for approval. Everybody in agreement?
Yep.
Thank you.
Supported.
Supported.
So going on to F now, 125 Canterbury Road. Application for the variation of condition 2 of planning permission for the change of use of a grade 2 listed building from residential institution to residential, so residential institution class C2 to residential class C3, consisting of 4 2-bedroom, 6 3-bedroom, 2 4-bedroom, 1 2-bedroom detached cottage, parking areas, garden storage, new entrance and gates, along with a partial demolition of existing classroom block and small roof extension to allow alterations to the internal layout and parking layout. Have we got the documents on the computer with regards to this?
Yeah.
Yeah, just.
Can anybody explain the variation of the condition and what that variation is? Councillor Page.
As I understand it from the documentation, they wanted to use the basement for particular activities, and have discovered since, because we've seen this application previously, and they've realised that they need to rethink what they're going to do, because the work to the basement is going to be far too complicated and expensive, and so they're altering the plans, not using the basement at all, and then just changing some of the rooms that they have here. I mean, it's not as complicated as it looks in this paragraph that you read, and I think the variation is arising out of the need to forget about using the basement at all, and they're going to leave that void. So it's purely changing some of the rooms internally.
Is it not changing it from some kind of institution to just simply residential? Were they going to be using it as an institution?
Well, C2 is residential care, and C3 seems to be care of people who live in groups, like a HMO care. We've not come across this before. I've left my notes on the big.
Councillor Matthew Scott, could you look up the definition of class C2 and class C3?
Also, C3, there's no need for a change of use to sui generis, which is, you need to look that up. I've left my notes. I've typed them all out and I've left them.
Thank you. So, class C2 is defined as the use for the provision of residential accommodation and care to people in need of care, other than a use within class C3, which is a dwelling house. Well, that's just made it clear as mud.
Oh, that's what I thought. But it is about making it available to groups of people who are in need of care, who can't live together, for instance, young people.
Okay, yeah. So, are there any concerns or have there been any objections to this online?
No,
Are there any concerns from councillors with regards to this?
no.
Have there been any concerns from KCC Highways with regards to this change?
No, there was nothing like that.
Okay. Shall we then make no comment with regards to this? If we have no concerns?
Yeah.
In this instance, yeah. I mean, I've not had any comments to myself personally on this one.
And it is what it is.
Mhm.
I think it's exactly the same. It's just they want to change the class,
Yeah.
which does mean that they can automatically change it to something else in the future.
Okay. Well, we'll see that in the future.
But they did stress on the plans, as Councillor Page said, it was about blocking the basement but retaining an exterior entrance so they could in the future refurbish the basement. And then they were blocking a door on the outside which didn't affect the heritage.
Okay.
But, I mean,
So we propose no comment with regards to
Supported
that.
without comments. comments?
Just no comment.
No comment, okay.
Comment, yes,
Okay.
no comment.
Okay.
So that's the end of the planning application. The next meeting is Tuesday the 9th of July, starting at 6:30. So maybe in the future on our agenda, we can then have some kind of comment with regards to highways and a comment with regards to the environment. The main thing that I wanted to speak about was the highways. So I don't know, maybe Mrs. Gray. Councillor Micallef has carried out some work with regards to the highways, and I wondered if I suggested that it could be announced to this committee, and he agreed.
Yes.
Would you like to?
Sorry, we can cover that under chairperson's announcements.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I forgot about that.
Okay. Sorry, I haven't got all the information in front of me, but it is online, and our proposal for works to be carried out to the Westgate Bay Avenue crossing
That's it.
to
Yeah.
improve the the visual aspect
Safety.
for safety for people using the crossing. So the works will be commencing next week, I believe. Scopes that are being done at the moment. The works will be very soon, but it's all on our website, and if anyone wants information, please contact us.
Thank you. So, sorry, my name's just Walling. Councillor Walling raised this at the council meeting. It's been raised a number of times that the visual aspect of the crossing is worrying to a lot of people, and the way that people can park all the way up to that crossing. And so works are going to be carried out in the future that will make that more open and more of a safe crossing for people. Councillor Page?
They're actually going to put bollards where those zigzag lines are at the moment, so that it will not be possible to park a car in that area leading up to the zebra crossing. So you should, after that's done, have full visibility of anybody waiting to cross the zebra crossing.
Perfect. Any other comments with regards to highways and environment that perhaps we can put on to the next council meeting?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. Lovely.
Okay.
Thank you. So meeting closed.
Thank you.
Perfect. 7:30.